Welcome to a special preview of On the Record, the podcast series from the Chartered Defense, where we analyze real-life malpractice cases to help clinicians understand the intersection of medicine and law. Everything you're about to hear is based on a real, closed malpractice case. We've anonymized the details to focus on the educational lessons. This is for educational purposes only and is not legal or medical advice. The case is real. My opinions are my own and are not medical or legal advice. Not every bad outcome is the result of bad medicine. But in a hospital setting, telling the difference can be incredibly difficult. And when the outcome is death, it often ends up in a courtroom. Today, we're giving you a high-level look at the case that forms the foundation of our first full season of this podcast. It's a story that starts with a medically complex patient and ends with a multi-year legal battle that was ultimately decided without ever seeing a jury. In the fall of 2019, a patient was admitted to the hospital with a host of chronic conditions: end-stage renal disease, pulmonary fibrosis, chronic atrial fibrillation, and diastolic heart failure, among others. He was admitted initially for chest pain and remained hospitalized for 3 months. On admission, the patient's skin was fully intact and he was ambulatory. But over the next 3 months, his condition spiraled. He suffered profound hypotension, respiratory failure requiring a ventilator, a stroke, and sepsis. Amid this critical illness, he developed a pressure injury on his sacrum. It began as a minor skin tear and worsened relentlessly, progressing from a stage 2 ulcer to an unstageable necrotic wound, and finally to a stage 4 ulcer with exposed bone. The patient 4 ulcer with exposed bone. The patient died on Christmas Eve from multi-organ system failure from septic shock.
This is a difficult outcome. I reviewed this case in detail from what court records have been made available during the appeal process. The documentation supports a man with multiple comorbid medical conditions that came into the hospital for chest pain. Sometimes, a routine presentation such as this can be the harbinger for a complicated hospital course. The patient appeared to suffer from some serious conditions during the hospital stay, ending up on the ventilator with a tracheostomy and PEG tube. My goal is not to blame any party in these reviews, but to lay out the case from the documentation provided during the trial and discuss what we can do to prevent ourselves from being in the situation that is about to unfold.
2 years later, his widow filed a malpractice lawsuit against the hospital, the physician group, and the patient's health plan, alleging that negligence had caused the fatal pressure injury. This is where the case takes a critical turn. During discovery, the plaintiff's expert witnesses, a wound care physician and a specialized nurse, could not pinpoint which specific providers had breached the standard of care, or when those specific breaches occurred. Their theory was general, not specific. Facing a motion to have their experts disqualified, the plaintiff's legal team shifted strategies. They abandoned the claim of specific negligence and instead argued res ipsa loquitur, a doctrine that translates to "the thing speaks for itself." They argued that a catastrophic pressure injury like this simply does not happen without negligence.
We will break down the legal strategies used by both sides in more detail as we do our deep dive into this case on Substack. We will also talk about medical experts, who they are, and what their role is in the process.
The trial court disagreed. In late 2024, the judge granted summary judgment for the defense, effectively ending the case before it ever reached a jury. The court found that res ipsa loquitur did not apply because the patient's dense and complex medical problems provided a plausible, non-negligent explanation for his severe skin failure. The plaintiff appealed, but the appellate court affirmed the decision, ending the case for good. This case is a powerful reminder of several core principles for practicing clinicians. First, a patient's risk for skin breakdown isn't static. It must be formally reassessed every time their physiology changes dramatically, like during an episode of septic shock or respiratory failure.
This patient was hospitalized for chest pain, developed a stroke, aspiration pneumonia, and then developed a sacral decubitus ulcer. With all that was going on with this patient, you might see how easy it could be to not document every issue in your note and what the plan is for it. There were some discrepancies in the chart around what stage the ulcer was and what day it had developed, but overall, the story told by the medical chart was consistent enough to show that the wound was being cared for, which supported the defense's claim. Just remember how important our documentation is and how important it is that the entire care team is consistent with what we are documenting. Having a huddle with the nurses and other service lines working with these patients would help ensure we have a consistent voice and plan of care.
Second, in complex care, you are often forced to balance competing risks. If you can't turn a hypotensive patient on 3 pressors, you must document why the ideal intervention wasn't feasible and what you did instead. And finally, the medical record is your best defense. This case fell apart because the plaintiff couldn't prove specific negligence. A well-documented chart that shows disciplined reassessment, clear communication between teams, and explicit ownership of complex problems makes a case defensible, even in the face of a tragic outcome. These takeaways are just the surface, of course. The summary judgment that ended this case hinged on years of preceding legal and medical arguments. And that's exactly what we explore in our full 7-part series on this case. If you found this overview useful, the full series goes deeper. We start with the standard of care fight, exploring what that term means clinically versus legally. We'll show you how the plaintiff framed the pressure injury as a never event, and how the defense successfully argued that even with perfect care, this outcome was not always preventable in a patient this critically ill. Then, we dedicate an episode to the medical expert witnesses. You'll hear the details of who the plaintiff retained, what their initial theories were, and how their depositions unraveled. We also dissect the legal strategies, and we'll analyze the unusual informed consent theory they tried to introduce late in the case. We'll break down the specific motions the defense used that ultimately ended the case before it ever reached a jury. Finally, we walk through the appeal and the final ruling, including a fascinating concurrence from one of the appellate judges who acknowledged the strength of some of the plaintiff's evidence, but ultimately agreed that their legal approach was fatally flawed from the start. This is the level of detail we believe clinicians need to truly understand the anatomy of a malpractice case. To get the complete story, subscribe to the Charted Defense on Substack. This series is called On the Record.
Every case is unique in how it plays out in court. This case could have gone in many different directions depending on the initial playbook used by the plaintiffs. This case illustrates that not every case that ends up in a lawsuit gets settled or end in a nuclear verdict, as some of us call them. We will have some of those cases in our upcoming seasons. I hope you enjoyed this overview of Season 1 and join us on Substack, where we will go through this case in much more detail and continue to learn.